Grab a seat. It's great to be here. We are coming towards the end of a series at the start of the year called Risk and Reward, but it's not just a series, it's a theme for the year, so you'll hear this language coming probably through a multitude of themes for the rest of the year. But I really like, for us, this is the third year that Christine and I have been part of this church, having relocated from New Zealand. But I really love how the themes, I feel like, have built on each other. So 2 years ago, it was about the glory of God. And kind of, man, God is so amazing, so powerful, so incredible. And just, man, we just want to see God's glory. And then last year was about faith. So it's like, oh yeah, the more I see how incredible God is, the more my natural response is faith in that. Because my faith is not in the size of my faith, it's in the size of my God. And it's like, man, you are so amazing. It's not hard to believe that when you touch someone's life, they're going to be healed. It's not so hard that to believe your presence could fill a high school. It's not so hard to believe churches could be springing up in Birmingham, and West London could relocate, and we could be growing all around the world. It's easy to believe when I'm captivated by a sense of the glory of God. And so then I love how this year then you kind of feel like, well, yeah, God is glorious, and man, I just believe. But God's like, I want to partner with you to see this happen. That God just doesn't generally pour out his glory, but he kind of invites us to, the river parts when the priests step into it. The miracle happens when the apostles say, stand up and walk. The healing happens when someone lays their hands on it. And my experience has been this, like, man, God's glory comes when I step out. And the challenge is not, could God do it? The challenge is me, like, have I got the courage to actually step out? I've found in times in my life, God, I want to see more of your healing power. It's like, well, Steve, you going to lay hands on some people and pray for healing? Oh, I want to see some more people come to faith. Well, Steve, are you going to share about Jesus? And I found this incredible thing that God partners with us. It's like, I want to see your glory in my life and my family, and maybe in your workplace, in your schools, in your hospital, in your town. And God's like, yeah, I want to pour out my glory too, but I'm going to do it with you and through you. And so we find ourselves like on this nervous, excited part of God's glory could break out right now, but it will happen when I step out. When I take a risk. And I don't know about you, but I just want to see God's glory. I want to see God's glory move in a way that I haven't seen before. And it's like, so man, God, just show me, what's the step you want me to take? How are we going to see this happen? And so I want to talk a bit today around the kind of faith that carries us to kind of go, God, there's more, and I want to see it break out. I shared last Saturday, we had a leaders day, and I shared around a message, and I want to pick that up, and those who are there, I just want to recap it a bit and then go on a bit more, because I think it's really important to kind of go, what's the kind of faith that's going to position me to see the glory of God come in my world? And about 20 years ago, Pastor Bruce Monk started challenging people in New Zealand, and he had this burden. He said, I see a lot of people that start out in faith and they end up in management. Like they start out in their youth with these radical steps of faith because they believe in God and they believe he wants to do something. But over time, then God blesses, but they end up just managing their current reality. And it's like, stewardship is good, but where's that radical step of faith again? And I've discovered in my life, it's like when we were younger, we took radical steps of faith. And I found out this is a message not just for young people, but it's like, man, to stay young inside, I need to keep on that edge, that nervous, excited posture. Like, God, you're calling me to do something. I'm not totally sure how this is going to work out, but I want to see your glory come. I believe you've got something more for me. And I'm not prepared to settle, so I'm going to step out. I was sharing before, probably one of the most significant things was about 12 years ago. Christine and I were living in Christchurch in the south of New Zealand. We had a 4-generation household, my mum, a daughter and granddaughter living with us. Just 2 years before, there'd been these terrible earthquakes that had destroyed most of the city. So I was one of 3 leading into the citywide pastors thing. There was lots of media stuff around that, and we'd just rebuilt this college. Like, I felt like my life was pretty full. And then if you've ever heard, we talk about this thing in Equippers about getting monked, when Bruce Monk just kind of drops this bombshell in your life with no warning. And so that was my context. And one day I'm at some meeting and he just walks past me, like no introduction, no softening up a bit. Just walks past me and goes, I think you need to resign from your job. I think you got too comfortable. I was like, how in any world is my last 2 years comfortable? And I was offended. And then 2 days later I woke up and I thought, bother, he's right. And at this, bother, he's right, I'm bored. And I hadn't realized I was actually bored despite all of that. And so then there was this call, man, just resign from your job, sell your house, get your mum in a rest home, daughter and granddaughter or something. But it reawakened something of this faith that says, no, there's more of God's glory for my life. And I don't want to settle with just managing this. And really since then, it's been this continuous thing. It's so fun living on the edge of nervous excited. And I pray today, if you're young, I pray you discover these moments when you just take radical steps of faith. But if you're a bit older, I pray that you recover that spirit. And again, you're like, God, I'm up for it because I just want to see your glory come. I saw Nigel up the back there. I think we had breakfast a couple of weeks ago, and he asked me an interesting question. He said, "Why are you here?" Because it's funny you asked that, because I'd walked down into Weybridge and I said I've been thinking about that exact question, so I have a precise answer for you. He said my job is to lead a college, but do you know why I'm here? I just want to see a revival. I just want to see a move of God. That's why I'm here. And it's like, I just want to see the greatest time of my life that I've ever seen in these next few years, with what could happen when the glory of God lands in our midst. And I have faith for that, but now I need to take a risk and know that there's going to be a reward for that. And I pray today God encourages you, like, man, we just want to see the glory of God in our world. And I have faith for that, but what's the step I have to take? So we were going to be speaking last week, I was thinking, like, what's that kind of faith? And I felt God say to me, it's audacious faith. Audacious faith. What is audacious? I had to look it up in the dictionary. Audacious means this: showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. Like, it's one thing to say risk and reward. It's another thing to say audacious faith that takes surprisingly bold risks. Like, these people are like, oh yeah, we're going to relocate from Surrey to Birmingham because we believe God's given us that city and he wants an amazing church there. We're going to see churches planted around the UK. We're surprisingly bold risks. And I love the second part of this definition, which looks maybe make you a bit nervous when you read it, showing an impudent lack of respect. I don't think that means a lack of respect for wise counsel and advice. It means a lack of being intimidated by the obstacles. A lack of respect for the giants that stand in my way. There's a promised land. We're going to talk about David and Goliath. There's a land out there. There's currently a giant standing in the way, but I'm not going to show him respect. He's going down. Joshua, there's a promised land we've been given. Currently there's a walled city, but I don't show those walls any respect. They're going to come down. And it's like this audacious faith that just is not going to be intimidated. If God has dropped a word in your spirit, given you a dream, a vision, a prophetic word, it's like, well, God, you said it. And actually, I'm going to go after that because I believe it. I want to carry an audacious faith. And the reason I think this is so important for Equippers is about 25 years ago or so, Cindy Jacobs, is an American prophet lady, had a word in a conference when Pastor Helen Monk was there and some others. I think it was a women's conference. She said this: in Equippers, God is raising up a generation of young firebrands. And I love that firebrand is just, metaphorically a person who's very passionate about a particular cause. But literally, it's a burning piece of wood. And not just any, it's starting fires, it's spreading, others have been caught up in this thing. It's igniting a forest fire. And part of the DNA of equippers is young firebrands. Just crazy faith, audacious faith, people that do unexpected things. And I think, we want to really ensure that, that's why you need, YXYA is so amazing. When a new generation catch the fire, they get a taste of the glory, and they go, man, we want more of that. So we need to make sure we're raising up that generation. But again, as Merritt said, if you're above that 25-year age kind of thing, it's like, no, in Equippers I love, we're not just, it's about the next generation. It is about them, but there's a whole lot of people that are a bit older that like, you know what, we've still got the fire inside. And I still want to live with audacious faith. I still want to believe for the glory of God to come in whatever part of my world there is. I want to have faith for God to do something that we've never seen before. So today, I want to talk about what is audacious faith. So I want to tell you some stories of young people that had audacious faith. But if you don't call yourself young, I don't want you sitting there going, oh, well, that's not me. I want you to go, I want that same spirit. I want to, if you're still on this earth, God's got an audacious, glorious something for you. And it's like, I want to take hold of everything God's got for me. So just to start, some of you would know there's a church in Manchester called Audacious Church. They're so audacious, they start it with an exclamation mark instead of ending it with an exclamation mark. But I just read an article that said, even that suggests this is a church that does things differently, that makes a statement, that says something in the world, that signifies the church is bold, exciting, and does things differently. I want to be a church like that. I want to be an audacious church that just does unexpected things, bigger than people would imagine. That wasn't possible. How did you do that? Wow, because we believe in a glorious God who's pouring out his glory, and we have faith for that. But the pastor is Glenn Barrett, who was born in Manchester but grew up in Australia. And at 21, he got a prophetic word. 21 years old, living on the other side of the world. This was the word. You'll go back to England, you'll plant a church, and one day you'll lead Assemblies of God in Great Britain. Assemblies of God be the biggest Pentecostal denomination, 600 churches. 21-year-old. Gets this audacious vision that sparks audacious faith. I'm going to use you to do something glorious back where you were born, and something in court, and dared to believe it. I wonder what you have audacious faith for this morning. There was an article just last week. Glenn Barrett, the audacious church leader causing traffic jams in Manchester. How cool, a church that they now have to think about managing the traffic flow around. Just audacious faith for something that hasn't been seen before. And I was thinking about this. I don't really know Manchester, but I imagine the culture's not, like, why would you call a church audacious in Manchester? I imagine it's quite deliberate, quite countercultural. And in Equippers, if he was an Equippers guy, people would say, don't be a Manchester church, be the church that Manchester needs to see. And I wonder if it's similar in Surrey. I wonder if there's something lovely and beautiful about living here, but I wonder if something needs to break out with an audacious faith. And the reason I say this is often when you travel and you come into different environments, you kind of pick up the mindset of the place or the spirit of the place. And I haven't checked this out with Pastor Mark, so I hope it's all right. But we had an open day for college. I lead the college here a few weeks ago, and I was walking into Weybridge to a cafe we're doing it at, and there was a few people coming, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a few people coming, and then I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, it's probably quite a big deal for people to take a whole year out to come to college. And then this thought went through my mind like, oh yeah, it's probably not that realistic to give God a year, is it? And then suddenly I was like, what? Where did that thought come from? Like in New Zealand, we've had over 100 people a year. The last 5 years I was there, it was 500 people. Like we had 1,000 in the last 10 years. Like what a crazy thought that it's totally realistic. But is there something we need to break out of it that just says, just play it safe, be successful, work hard, don't take too many risks? And I think we need to be a church that's the church that Surrey needs to see, of audacious faith, of breakthrough faith, that's not prepared to just be nice and comfortable. And so again, Glenn Barrett, 21, carries this audacious faith. Here's some other stories. Some of you may have heard of some of these. Jackie Pullinger, she'd be around 80 now. I spoke at a conference with her a few years ago. But at 22, she graduated with a degree in playing the oboe. Sorry, apologies to any oboe players, but she felt called to mission, and what are you going to do with that? She would write to mission agencies. I feel called to be a missionary. They're like, we don't have a big demand for oboe players currently. But she felt this call, and she literally had a dream one night of this world map, and she saw something standing out, and she looked down at the map and saw the words Hong Kong. So she wrote to all these mission agencies, hey, I feel like God's calling me to Hong Kong. What do? I play the oboe. Oh, no, not really anything there. But a young vicar said this to her, if God has spoken, you need to obey. And so she's like, ugh. Talk about risk and reward. So she saved up the price for a boat ticket to China, got on the boat, got off at Hong Kong with £6 in her pocket, and immigration weren't going to let her in, 21-year-old single woman with £6. She managed to get in there. She somehow ended up in there's this thing called a walled city, which all these heroin addicts. So 22-year-old single woman oboe player ends up starting a ministry to heroin addicts in Hong Kong. That's audacious faith. Glenn Barrett, 21. Jackie Pullinger, 22. But older. Some of you may have heard of this guy, C.T. Studd. He was born 1860, but he went to Cambridge University. At 22, he was in the English cricket team, played in the first Ashes test. But at age 25, so you're getting the theme here, Glenn Barrett, 21, Jackie Pullinger, 22, C.T. Studd, 25. A group of 7 of them in Cambridge said, do you know what? We believe we're called to China. So they packed up and he left the Cambridge University education, he left the English cricket team, and he went to China. The other thing he did just before he left, and he inherited some money that they say in today's value would have been somewhere between 4 or 5 million pounds. He gave it away. So what are you doing? That could have funded. He's like, no, I just feel called to step out and trust in God. So he gave it all away and went to China. And then he ended up moving to India and then finally to Africa, where he founded Worldwide Evangelism Crusade, or called WEC. But again, 25. So this is the age of audacious faith, 21, 22, 25. It's like, this is where God creates firebrands. Well, actually, he creates them earlier. That's about when they're ready to step out. I love this saying he's famous for. Some want to live within the sound of church or chapel bell. I want to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell. He's like, I don't want to live comfortable. I want to go where the greatest need is and make a difference. I want to see God's glory break in the darkest places. I've got faith that God's glory could fall in places where people would never imagine. And I love the fact he gave his life to it. Just in case you think it's all about missionaries, William Wilberforce, again, became an MP at 25. And God captivated him with the great evil of his generation of slavery. And at age 28, he feels that his life mission is to take on slavery. Global slavery. 28-year-old, yeah, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to smash the greatest evil in our world. Seriously. And then for the next 20 years, he works at this until there's a Slave Trade Act was passed in 1807, which banned the international trade. But he worked for another 27 years for the Slavery Abolition Act. 3 days before he died, he heard that this act was going to get through Parliament. He spent 47 years. But it started as a 28-year-old. I got a dream. The glory of God touching my world through the abolition of slavery. I'm called to that. I have audacious faith. I'm going to take the risk to get involved in politics and give my life to change the laws on slavery. Just incredible. Another guy, which I didn't talk about last Saturday, if you there, was Hudson Taylor. Again, at age 22, felt called to move to China. He spent 54 years in China. founded the China Inland Mission, which then became the Overseas Missionary Fellowship. He himself, in the early days, they recruited 800 missionaries to China. Like again, but at 22, notice Glenn Barrett, 21, Jackie Pullinger, 22, C.T. Studd, 25, William Wilberforce, 28, Hudson Taylor, 22. Like this is where God moves. I love that fact that Equippers is a next generation church that has a calling to raise up the next generation of young firebrands. I'm never cynical about young people kind of announcing what they feel called to do. There's a process to get there, but we believe in a generation of young firebrands. And the thing that I love about why I've remembered him is he's famous for this statement: expect great things from God, but then attempt great things for God. It's the risk and reward thing. Yeah, I expect that God can do incredible things because he's glorious. I know that he's able to do this. When he speaks, when he gives dreams, when he prophesies, I totally believe that that's going to happen. But I'm not content just to live on the top line. I'm then going to step out. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to attempt those things. And because I know that God's glory breaks in as I step out. And so I wonder what moment it is that it's time for you to engage with something. The reason I remember this, I've got a friend who's one of the Equippers pastors in New Zealand, Byron Marchant, who lives in Wellington, which is actually the capital of New Zealand. But a few years ago, he got given this amazing church building on the edge of Wellington. It was probably seats like 500 people. Like, it's just amazing. He's set for life. But do you know what? In his spirit, he's a good friend of mine, in his spirit burns this vision to reach the whole region. And he's like, we could be comfortable here managing this reality and it will grow nicely. But something inside of him just says there's more. And he's had this burden like, no, in the center of Wellington, which is by our parliament, by our universities, we need to plant back in there. It's like, why, Byron? You can do everything there. He's like, no, we need to get something back in the center of Wellington. We need to see the glory of God break out in the university, in the parliament. We need to do something there. And so they're just doing 8 Sunday nights of worship nights, and there's challenge and stuff. But this is the motto that he's put. We expect great things from God. We expect God to break out in downtown Wellington, and so we're going to attempt that. We're going to step out. We're going to do something about it. And I love that thought of audacious faith. Yeah, we believe that God's able to do something, but then we're also going to do our part, and we're going to attempt those things. We're going to step out. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to make decisions to do things that could see God's glory come. And we just don't want to settle for the status quo. I want to see the glory of God come in my lifetime in a way that I haven't seen before. To be honest, when we were in our early 20s, we saw a bit of a move of God and when we were youth workers. And it's like, God, could we see it again? Before I die, before I finish, could I be part of another move of God? That's all I want to see. And so, so these are stories, but I want to just go to one brief story from Scripture, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because many of you would know, which is the story of David and Goliath. So again, we don't know how old he is, but he's a teenager. He's somewhere between probably 17 to 19. A teenager. Do you get it? God uses teenagers. God uses young people of audacious faith to do incredible things to usher in his glory. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the story, but I just want to set up the contrast between the religious status quo over here and how they approach things and this young teenager of audacious faith. And I pray you think, I want to be with this guy. I want to carry this spirit. So the context is the Philistines come out, they gather their forces, verse 2, and they pitch their camp. Verse 2, Saul and the Israelites respond and they camp on this other side. So verse 3, the Philistines occupied one hill, the Israelites another, with a valley between them. Okay, so they're all set for a battle. And there's this big, ugly giant. Ugly is an interpretation, but there's a big giant there who comes out and it's like, here's the intimidation. Here's the point of challenge. And I want to tell you, if you've got a dream or vision, there will be a Goliath standing between you and your dream. And it's like, I pray today you get the audacious faith that has this impudent lack of respect for the giants. that says if God has promised it, then that giant must be going down. And God will use me to take the giant down. And I love, interesting context. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. It's that voice that's always in the back of your head. You'd never be different. You can't make a change. You're always going to be like this. You're not going to move forward. You're not going to take any ground. And something needs to get to a point where, I refuse to accept the status quo with this. And that's where I love David arrives. And it just says this, and this is where it just becomes almost ridiculous. The second line down, he reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. So, hold on. So for 40 days, every morning you get up, you put on the armor, you put on the face paint, you start the music, and you march out there. Yeah, we're going to take the city for Jesus. We're going to do this, da, da, da. And you sing all your songs, and you strut around, but you make sure there's a valley between you and the enemy, and then at night you go home again. I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life coming to church on Sunday, singing the songs, and going home again, and making sure we never get near the giants. There's some things around the anxiety and depression on the youth of this generation, the poverty, the sex trafficking. There's some giants that's like, come on, someone needs to arrive like David does, who arrives and he just says, he doesn't even question whether the giant's going down. He's like, I wonder what I'll get if I take the giant out. And I love the fact that youthful, audacious faith can seem like arrogance. So on the next one, his brothers stand up and down a bit further. I know how conceited you are, how wicked your heart is. You only came down to watch the battle. And it's like, we need to be a culture and equippers that champions audacious faith. I love Paul Matt shared the other week around how the church believed in this audacious vision. We could remove a disease in our generation. What an audacious vision of God's glory reaching Ethiopia. What an audacious vision that we could have programs in the high schools around Surrey. What an audacious vision that we could have churches planted up and down the nation as like bonfires of light shining around the nation. What an audacious vision from Bruce Monk that he could start a global movement all around the world. That's what we're part of, audacious faith. To see God's glory. And then, I love this. He's just this total confidence. Let no one lose heart. Your servant will go and fight him. I've got this. Because I know God's put something inside of me. And just, the words get crazier and crazier. As the Philistine moved closer, each word kind of escalates. David ran. Not only ran, he ran quickly. But he wasn't running away. He ran quickly towards the battle to meet the giant. I pray today you get something inside of you that says, do you know what? I'm not going to keep avoiding this giant because it's stopping me from entering my inheritance. This giant has to go down. And I'm not prepared to keep the status quo going because there's something of God's glory he wants to usher in. There's more. I feel there's more. There's more for us. There's more of God's glory. There's more of his kingdom. There's more of his influence. And it's like, I just want to get hold of everything that God's got. And it just said, so David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. We're making a difference, but there's more. Could I get the keyboardist to come back? Thanks, John. I just want to finish with a couple more stories from our world that might, I hope, inspire you to think, man, there is a whole lot more that we could go after. So if you don't know, there was a famous revival in Wales in 1904, 1905. The main figure, and that was this guy, Evan Roberts, which later on led to the formation of the Apostolic Church, which then Equippers is part of that. So this is the roots of us. This revival in Wales in 1904, 1905. And again, this guy, Evan Roberts, he was 26 years old. Historians often say this was the greatest revival since Acts chapter 2. The greatest revival in the history of the church was led by a 26-year-old Welsh guy with audacious faith. But it happened in this chapel, this church, called Moriah Chapel, but about half a mile away is this little chapel that the church had built for their children's ministry. And at 16, Evan Roberts was put in charge of running children's church in this little chapel. 16-year-old, starting ministry that 10 years later would launch the greatest revival that the world has seen. 16-year-old. I get it, 16-year-old. I wonder who's over in the children's ministry now. That's the next great revivalist, the next great champion of a move of God. They're probably being formed over there or in youth on a Friday night. And oh man, I feel God's anointing coming. Man, the secret things of God that are being formed to be unlocked with people who just carry in their heart this passion. And he would teach children's church, but he preached for the first time in the main church at 18. You think if Pastor Mark brings an 18-year-old up to preach, it's like, this could be the next great preacher in the UK that starts something significant. But as well as leading children's church, he would pray at night, often wake up at 1 a.m. and pray for hours during the night and have these visions. One of the visions he saw, I want to slow down because I want you, I'll tell you, I feel like God's ready to birth this again. I feel like, wow, it just got very serious. I feel like God's ready to do it again. I don't know about you, but I want to be part of it. So he had these visions. One of these visions, he'd be praying for Wales, but he saw this hand outstretched with a bit of paper on it, and on it was written 100,000. And he talks about ever since that moment, he couldn't not pray for 100,000 souls to be saved in Wales. So from can't remember what age he got that vision. 16 to 26, revival. God, I'm praying for my nation. Audacious faith. He's not praying for the 10 kids in his children's church. He's praying for revival in Wales. 100,000 people. 1904 revival breaks out. In 9 months, 100,000 people come to faith. Peter and I have been to that church. There's they closed. Briefly, they would give judges white gloves to show there were no crimes to prosecute. In the mines, the horses didn't know what to do because they were used to the miners swearing at them, and they no longer understood them not swearing. I've seen the rugby list of the winning team each year. There's a gap in 1905 because they didn't play rugby that year because everyone was in revival meetings. Like extraordinary events happen. Extraordinary events. Because a 16-year-old started praying this, God, give me my nation. Like, isn't that amazing? God, give me the nation. I believe in your glory. God, give me the nation. And he believed for it. And he saw it happen when he was 26. I just feel the Holy Spirit just say, wait. Like, God, give me the nation. God, give me the schools. Give me the high schools. God, give me let your glory come in Parliament. God, give me the health system. God, let us see your glory come. We just want to be stewards of your glory. A young 22-year-old guy called Daniel Powell Williams visited Evan Roberts. He'd heard about this. I want that guy to pray for me. He couldn't meet him at the main church, couldn't get into the prayer meeting, so he waited outside that little chapel, and when the guy came out, he said, would you pray for me? So Evan Roberts is 26, D.P. Williams is 22. Evan Roberts puts his hand on him, prays for him, he falls to the ground, lays there for 2 hours. Has a vision of Jesus on the cross and a drop of blood coming and touching him and instantly cleansed. 2 years later, he feels called to be a preacher. 24. Do you know what they went on to found this thing called the Apostolic Church? Someone had a prophetic word. This movement is going to belt the globe, go right around the globe. They say, there's a quote, says this, he's the only Welshman to establish a worldwide church. So there's between 10 and 15 million people in the Apostolic Church globally. Bruce Monk, who's here last week, is kind of the unofficial leader of that. So this is going to belt the globe. What is it? It started in Wales. Well, the back end of the belt is pretty much New Zealand, and it's come back round, and you join the buckle up. So you sitting here, you're living in the fulfillment of that prophecy that a 24-year-old had, that you're going to be part of a movement birthed in Wales that's going to go around the globe and come back to the UK. I was speaking about this last Saturday, and I'd prepared it a few weeks before, and I woke up Saturday morning and I felt God say, you need to prepare a bit more. So I was like, okay, so I prayed, and I had a vision of this guy, D.P. Williams. And I felt like the anointing and the mantle that was on him is available for us again. But the prayer is, God, give us the nation. God, do it again. Pour out your glory. We got audacious faith to believe that you could do it again. 9 months, 100,000 people came to faith. Like, do it again, God. I want to finish with one last story, because I think it's really important. This is a picture of some leaders of the revival. There's one woman there, her name's Florence or Flory. She was 19 when the revival started. Again, 19-year-old girl, one of the leaders of this revival. You got that? 19, 21, 22, 25, 27, 28. It's interesting. They talk about the revival started at a meeting when people were sharing testimonies, and she just said this, one sentence. This is what the account says. A young girl named Flory Evans rose to her feet and said this, I love Jesus Christ with all my heart. Immediately, the whole meeting seemed to catch fire. A 19-year-old girl sparked the Welsh revival, which Evan Roberts picked up, which D.P. Williams launched a movement out of, which belted the globe and turned into equippers on the other side of the world and came back, and we're part of it. A 19-year-old girl, one sentence. But I was sharing with Pastor, the context is interesting, the backstory, because 2 weeks before, this guy, Joseph Jenkins, had preached at her church, and he goes home for dinner afterwards. He's having dinner. There's a knock at the door, and this girl, she walks in and sits down, doesn't say anything. And then after a while, she says, I've been pacing around outside for half an hour. I've got to talk to you. And she said, this is what she said, the matter of my soul is almost killing me. Like this turmoil inside. And this is what he said to her. Can you say, my Lord, to Jesus Christ? She's a smart girl. She says, no, I can't. She said this, I understand it, but I cannot say it. I don't know what he will ask me to do. Something very difficult, perhaps. This guy, Joseph Jenkins, is very wise. He doesn't say, it's all right. Jesus loves you. He said, Flora, you need to go back to your room, and you need to pray, and you need to get to this point where you can surrender to Jesus. And she obviously did that. And 2 weeks later or so, in a meeting, one line, I do love Jesus with all of my heart. And revival breaks out. The reason I love that story is I suspect the Goliaths in our world are not out there. They're not in the high schools. They're not in the parliament. They're in here and then here. And she defeated the Goliath in her room. And then the Goliath of Wales just split open with one sentence. Can I invite you to stand? And again, however you connect with God, if it's close your eyes, raise your hands. But I love this, going back to this sentence from Hudson Taylor, expect great things from God. Attempt great things for God. You know, I was praying this week, I feel like God's just sending messengers of heaven with almost divine commissions. It may come in the form of a picture, a prophetic word, a vision, a dream. And you're like, God, that's what it would look like if your glory came. That's what I'm expecting you to do. I believe God wants to commission people with dreams and visions and burdens. Like a young David, I can take this down. Like a young Jackie Pullinger, like a young Glenn Barrett. But the other thing I love about Equippers, there's a whole lot of us old people as well. It's still like, we still got the fire. We're firebrand still. And we want to carry that till the day we die. And so I pray that you just in this moment open your heart to God. What would you have me believe for? What would I dare to expect from you? And God, what are the steps to attempt that? And I pray if you recognize there's a Goliath that stood in your way from that, you would say the Goliath is going to fall. Fear, intimidation, insecurity, poverty spirit, accusation, condemnation, whatever it is. This sense, I'm not going to tolerate this Goliath anymore. I'm not going to settle for the status quo. I'm going to move forward. I just believe God will want to enrich your heart and your mind, your imagination. Maybe you want to put your hand on your heart. It's like, God, put the fire in there again. Put the dream, put the vision, put the burden in there. Commission me to see your glory, to see your glory. Come on, we're just going to worship God for a minute and let him impart something.